The wind howled across the frozen plains like a wounded beast. Sharp snowflakes danced in the air, cutting through the skin like 1,000 tiny blades. Under the dying light of a twin-moon sky, a lonely figure moved slowly, each step heavier than the last. Her name was Liara, an alien widow from the once peaceful world of Vena. Her body was thin, her clothes torn and burned by cold. Her blue-gray skin shimmered faintly beneath the frost that clung to it. In her trembling hands, she carried a small pouch inside it, the last of her food, 3 dried roots and a cracked memory, crystal that held the voice of her late husband. Every breath was pain. Every heartbeat was a reminder that she was still alive. When everyone else was gone, the war between humans and Vanians had ended months ago, but peace had not returned. Villages were destroyed, food was gone, and fear still ruled both species. Humans now guarded their colonies tightly. Aliens like Liara were not welcome anywhere. Liara had not eaten in 4 days. Her stomach twisted with hunger, and her legs felt like stone. But she kept walking through the snowstorm because of a promise to her husband before he died. "Live, even if the stars fall," he had said. So she walked, though every step felt like walking through death itself. Hours passed. The storm grew stronger. Liara's vision blurred as the horizon disappeared behind a wall of white. Then, through the storm, she heard a faint cry. It wasn't the wind. It was a small voice, weak, trembling, almost lost in the snow. She turned her head, struggling to listen. "Help! Please, someone!" Her heart jumped. The voice was that of a child. She stumbled toward the sound, falling twice before reaching a half-buried shape under the snow, a small alien girl, no older than 7. The girl's lips were blue, her skin pale, and her eyes large. Glowing faintly, gold fluttered open weakly. Liara knelt beside her and brushed the snow off her face. "Little one," she whispered, her voice hoarse from cold. "You're alive." The girl shivered. "Mama left me behind." The soldiers. Liara looked around. There were no signs of life, no footprints, but hers and the girl's. Only the storm. Her throat tightened. She pulled the girl close, wrapping her torn cloak around them both. "Don't be afraid," she said softly. "I'm here now." The girl whispered something faintly. "My name is Myra." Liara smiled sadly. "Myra," she repeated, tasting warmth in the name. "Hold on. We will find shelter." But there was no shelter, only endless snow and wind that screamed like ghosts. Still, Liara stood and lifted the small child in her arms. Her legs trembled under the weight, but she refused to let go. Somewhere far ahead, a faint light flickered. It was distant, pale, but it was hope. Liara walked toward it. Every step was a battle. The cold bit her skin, the snow blinded her eyes. But she kept moving toward that single glimmer. When she reached the source, she found something she never expected: offensive metal, glowing faintly blue, marking the border of a human colony. Beyond it, she saw shadows moving, lights flashing, and the faint sound of machinery. She froze. Humans. Fear and memory hit her like fire. She still remembered the screams of her people as human warships rained destruction on her village. She remembered soldiers dragging families away, and yet, behind that fence was warmth, food, and life. She looked down at the little girl in her arms. Mayra's breathing was shallow, her lips trembling. Liara whispered, "If I go there, they might kill me. But if I don't, you will die." A single tear slid down her cheek and froze before it could fall. She pulled her cloak tighter and stepped forward. At the edge of the fence, a red sensor light blinked. The air filled with a warning hum. A mechanical voice shouted, "Unauthorized life form detected. State your purpose or be neutralized." Liara raised her arms slowly. "Please, a child. She's dying. I mean no harm." There was silence. Then, out of the shadows, several bright lights appeared, human patrol drones, small flying machines that circled her. Their beams scanned her from head to toe, flashing red across her alien skin. One of them said, "Stay where you are." Liara held Mira tighter. "Please, she needs help," she pleaded. "She's just a child." The drones hovered, silent and cold. Then she heard the sound of footsteps crunching through snow. A human man appeared from behind the gate, his coat thick and his face covered with frost. He held a rifle, but his eyes were tired rather than cruel. He looked like someone who had seen too much of war and wanted none of it anymore. His name was Captain Raylan Ward, a supply officer stationed at the colony's outer border. He had been on a late-night inspection when he heard the alarm. When he saw the figure kneeling in the snow, a thin alien woman clutching a child, he stopped. For a moment, neither moved. The wind roared between them. Raylan lowered his weapon slightly. "You're a Vanian," he said quietly. "You know you can't be here." Liara bowed her head. "I know," she said. "But she's dying. Please, help her. Then I will leave." He looked at the child's face, small, fragile, and nearly blue from cold. Something in his chest twisted. He remembered his own daughter, who had died during the war. The memory hit like a knife. "Come with me," he said finally. Quickly. He opened the gate and guided them through the narrow path into his cabin near the outer wall. The warmth inside hit Liara like a wave. The smell of fire and wood filled the air. She gently laid Mira near the heater, rubbing her hands to bring back warmth. Raylan grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around the child. "She's freezing," he muttered. "How long was she out there?" "Too long," Liara said softly. He looked at her closely, her alien eyes glowing faint blue, her face pale and hollow. He noticed the burns on her arms and the frostbite along her fingers. He frowned. "You need help too." She shook her head. "Only the girl matters." He turned away and poured soup into a metal bowl. "Both of you matter right now," he said, setting the bowl near her. "Eat before you fall over." Liara stared at it. The smell made her stomach twist, but she hesitated. "Humans do not feed Vanians," she said quietly. Raylan sighed. "Maybe they don't, but I do." She looked into his eyes and saw no hatred, there only exhaustion and something softer, something she didn't understand. After a long pause, she took a small sip. The taste was plain but warm, and tears filled her eyes. She hadn't tasted warmth in weeks. Meanwhile, Mira stirred under the blanket. Her small voice whispered, "Mama?" Liara turned quickly. "I'm here, Mira." The girl blinked and saw Raylan. She smiled faintly. "Who's he?" Raylan smiled back. "Just someone who likes to help." Mira tilted her head sleepily. "You look kind. Like my dad used to." Raylan's smile faded, but he said nothing. Hours passed. The storm outside howled, but inside the cabin there was silence, only the crackle of fire and the sound of slow breathing. Liara sat near the heater, watching the flames. She was grateful, but afraid. Every kindness she had known in this world had turned into loss. When Raylan checked on them again, she spoke softly. "Why did you help us?" He looked surprised. "Because you needed it, even though we are your enemies." He shook his head. "The war ended. I'm tired of seeing enemies everywhere. You're not a soldier. You're a mother." Liara's eyes glistened. "I was a wife once," she said. "But now, I'm only someone trying not to die." Raylan said nothing more. He placed a log on the fire and sat quietly across from her. Mira stirred again in her sleep. Her hand reached toward Liara but found Raylan's instead. She held his fingers gently. "Thank you," she murmured, half asleep. "Please marry my mom, so she can have warm meals every day." Raylan froze. The words hung in the air like a spark. Liara gasped, her cheeks turning pale blue. The man looked at her awkwardly, half smiling. "Well, that's a bold child you have." Leora turned her face away, hiding her tears. For years, she had been invisible, hated by both sides, forgotten by life itself. And now, a little girl she barely knew had wished her something she had forgotten she could ever have: love, warmth, and belonging. Raylan leaned back slowly, his gaze still on the girl sleeping beside the fire. "Kids say strange things," he said softly. "But sometimes, maybe they see truth better than we do." Leora didn't reply. She only watched the flames dance across the room, lighting the human's tired face and the sleeping child's peaceful smile. For the first time in years, she felt something she thought had died within her, a flicker of hope. Outside, the snow continued to fall, hiding the world in silence. But inside that small cabin, 3 souls, human and alien, shared one fire, one breath, and one fragile moment of peace. And somewhere deep in Leora's heart, a question whispered quietly: could this warmth become home? The next morning, soft sunlight crept through the frosted window of Raylan's small cabin. The storm had finally calmed. Snow still blanketed the land outside like a white ocean, but inside there was warmth, the faint smell of firewood and soup. Leora sat near the hearth, her hands around a cup of hot water. Steam curled up like smoke between her blue fingers. She still couldn't believe she was alive. She looked toward the bed where the little girl Mira lay sleeping beneath a thick blanket that Raylan had given her. The child's breathing was slow and peaceful now. For a long moment, Leora just watched her, the rise and fall of her chest, the innocence in her small alien face. Then she whispered, "Thank the stars." Across the room, Raylan stood by a metal stove, stirring something in a pot. He looked tired but calm. His dark hair was messy, and his eyes held the quiet patience of a man who had lived through too many winters. When he noticed Leora watching, he smiled faintly. "Good morning," he said. "You look better." Leora nodded slowly. "I owe you more than I can say." He shrugged. "You don't owe me anything. The war took enough from all of us. No reason to let it take kindness too." She didn't answer. Her people had a saying: kindness from the enemy is a test from the stars. She wasn't sure if this human's kindness was a blessing or a trap. But for now, she chose to stay silent and watch. Raylan poured soup into 2 bowls and placed one in front of her. The smell of warm vegetables and broth filled the small cabin. Her stomach tightened instantly. "Eat," he said gently. "You'll need your strength." She hesitated, still wary. "Why do you help us?" "I know what humans think of my kind." He leaned on the table. "You think too much about what others think. Sometimes it's simple. You needed help. I had food. That's it." Leora studied him for a moment. His face showed no fear, no disgust, just quiet honesty. Finally, she lifted the spoon and took a small sip. The warmth spread through her like sunlight after a long winter. "Thank you," she whispered. Raylan smiled slightly. "You're welcome." Mira stirred on the bed and sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Is it morning?" she asked sleepily. Leora stood and hurried to her. "Yes, little one. You're safe." Mira looked around, blinking at the strange place. Then her eyes found Raylan, who was wiping his hands on a cloth. She tilted her head curiously. "You're human, right?" He chuckled. "Last time I checked." "Mom says humans are dangerous," Myra said boldly. "But you don't look dangerous. You look sad." Raylan froze for a moment. Then he smiled weakly. "Maybe your mom is right about the dangerous part. But sad, that's hard to argue with." The little girl giggled, her voice soft but full of life. It was the first real sound of happiness the cabin had heard in months. Leora smiled faintly. She hadn't heard laughter since before the war. After breakfast, Raylan gathered his coat. I need to check the fence line, he said. You two should stay inside. The snow can be deadly. Liara nodded, but her eyes followed him carefully. She still didn't trust this world. When the door closed behind him, she turned to Myra. You shouldn't speak so freely, she whispered. Humans might be kind for a day, but they change when others watch. Myra frowned. But he saved us. He gave us food. Yes, Liara said softly, brushing the girl's hair. And we will not forget that. But remember, child, safety is only real when you can protect yourself. Myra nodded slowly, though her innocent eyes still shone with belief in the man who had saved her life. Outside, Raylan trudged through the snow, scanning the border sensors. His mind wasn't on his work. He kept seeing that alien woman's eyes, tired, filled with both fear and pride. She wasn't like the stories the army had told him about Vanians. There was no hatred in her voice, only exhaustion. He remembered the day his own family had died, a bombing near the human outpost, collateral damage from a Vanian strike. For years he had blamed every alien for that pain. But now, looking at Liara and Myra, he wasn't so sure what side was right anymore. As he tightened a loose wire on the fence, he muttered, maybe we all lost the same thing. When he returned to the cabin, Liara was trying to fix her torn cloak with a needle made from bone. Myra was sitting near the window, drawing shapes in the frost with her small fingers. Everything okay? Raylan asked. Liara looked up and nodded. Yes, the child is feeling better. Myra turned and smiled. I made a picture. Look, it's you and me and Mom by the fire. Raylan walked over, pretending to study it seriously. You made me taller than I really am, he joked. That's because you look strong, Myra said. You saved us. Her words hit him deeper than he expected. He smiled and patted her head. Maybe you'll be the one saving people someday. The girl grinned proudly, and Liara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. The warmth of family, even if it wasn't real yet. Days passed. The storm outside weakened, but inside the small cabin, a strange peace grew. Liara began to trust Raylan, little by little. She helped him clean the cabin, cooked what little food they had, and even shared alien healing herbs from her pouch when his hands cracked from cold. Raylan, in turn, taught Myra how to light the fire and told her stories about Earth, about oceans that stretched forever, about cities of glass that touched the sky. The child listened with wide eyes, her imagination painting pictures of a world she would never see. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, Liara sat by the fire sewing a torn glove. Raylan sat opposite her, sharpening his knife. The silence between them was soft, not heavy. Finally she said quietly, You lost someone too, didn't you? He looked up. Yes, my daughter. She was about Myra's age. Liara's hands froze. I'm sorry. He nodded slowly. The war took her. After that, I stopped believing in sides. Just survival. Liara stared into the fire. I thought I was the only one left broken. Raylan shook his head. We're all broken. The trick is learning how to live with the cracks. Their eyes met, human and alien, two survivors of a senseless war. And for the first time, neither looked away. Later that night, Myra woke from a nightmare. She cried quietly, whispering her father's name. Liara tried to calm her, but the child trembled. Raylan approached, crouched beside her bed, and said softly, Hey, it's okay. You're safe here. Myra sniffled. But my dad, he's gone. Raylan hesitated, then gently took her hand. Sometimes the people we love don't really leave. They stay right here. He touched her chest lightly. Inside. Myra looked at him through tears. Do you really think so? I know so, he said with a sad smile. She smiled back faintly, eyes heavy with sleep. Then maybe you can stay too. You can be my new dad. Raylan froze, his breath caught. Leora's heart skipped. "Mayra," she whispered, embarrassed. "Don't say such things." But Mayra was already asleep again. Holding Raylan's hand, he sat there for a moment, staring at the sleeping child, then slowly pulled his hand free. "She's strong," he murmured. "She's all I have," Leora replied quietly. Raylan nodded. "Then we'll make sure she stays safe." The next morning, voices broke the peace. "Open up, Raylan Ward." It was the voice of Lieutenant Carver, the head of the Border Patrol. Leora froze instantly. Mira's eyes widened. Raylan motioned for them to stay silent and went to the door. When he opened it, 2 soldiers stood outside, rifles slung across their shoulders. Carver frowned. "The surveillance picked up non-human traces near your cabin last night. You seen anything?" Raylan's heart raced, but his face stayed calm. "Just a fox. Nothing else." The soldier behind Carver muttered, "A fox doesn't leave 2 sets of footprints." Carver stepped forward. "If you're hiding something, Raylan, you'll hang for it. You know the law." Raylan forced a small smile. "Then come in and look for yourself." The soldiers entered, scanning the room. Leora and Mira hid quietly behind a wooden wall panel Raylan had built during his army years, a secret storage nook big enough for 2 people. They held their breath as boots stomped nearby. One soldier paused right in front of their hiding spot. He tapped the wall once, twice. Leora gripped Mira's hand tighter. "Empty," the soldier said finally. "Just rats." Carver grunted. "Fine, but if we catch you lying, Ward, I'll burn this cabin myself." When they finally left, Raylan locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Leora stepped out of hiding, trembling. "They would have killed us," she whispered. He turned toward her, voice low but steady. "Then we'll make sure they never find you." Mira ran to him and hugged his leg. "You saved us again, human." Raylan knelt and hugged her back. "Always," he said softly. Leora stood there, watching, her heart full of fear, gratitude, and something new she couldn't name. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was love beginning to bloom, quietly, like a seed in the snow. Outside, the wind began to rise again. But inside that small cabin, the fire burned stronger, a fragile warmth between 3 lost souls who had finally found each other. The snow outside Raylan's cabin had begun to melt, but the air was still cold enough to bite. Days passed quietly, yet the peace felt thin like ice that could crack at any moment. Leora often sat by the small window, sewing old fabric into clothes for Mira. The girl laughed more now, playing with wooden toys Raylan had carved for her. It looked like a family almost. But beneath that fragile peace, fear still lived in Leora's heart. She knew humans didn't forgive easily. Raylan pretended everything was normal, but he was restless. The patrol had grown suspicious. Every night he heard drones humming near the fence, scanning the snow for footprints. He knew if they ever discovered Leora and Mira, he'd be tried for treason. Yet when he saw the child smile, he knew he couldn't send them away that morning. Raylan returned from the colony with a few supplies hidden under his coat: bread, dried meat, and 2 small cans of soup. He placed them on the table. "I had to trade 3 batteries for this," he said with a grin. "So you better appreciate it." Mira clapped her hands. "Real food." Leora smiled softly but looked uneasy. "You shouldn't risk this much for us. If they find out." "They won't," he said firmly. "I'm careful." Her voice dropped lower. "Raylan, humans don't forgive traitors. And to them, helping us is exactly that." He sat across from her. "And what about you, Leora? What do your people do to someone who helps humans?" She looked away. "They call them worse than traitors. They call them ghost souls who betrayed their own blood." Raylan leaned back, studying her face. So we both chose the same side, then the side that no one trusts. For a long time neither spoke. Only the soft crackle of fire filled the silence. Mira hummed a tune under her breath, unaware of the heavy storm hidden in their quiet words. Later that day, Raylan went outside to repair the outer gate. As he worked, he saw a shadow moving in the distance, a man on a snowbike wearing a long brown coat. It was Lieutenant Carver again. Raylan cursed under his breath. Carver was not the kind of man to forget suspicion. He finished his work quickly and returned inside. "Stay quiet," he whispered to Leora. "Lock the back door. Don't make a sound until I come back." Mira clutched his sleeve. "Are they bad people?" He knelt down and smiled faintly. "They just don't understand yet. But I'll make sure they don't hurt you." He stepped outside and met Carver halfway down the path. Carver dismounted his snowbike, eyes cold and sharp. "You've been avoiding the main camp," he said. "Why?" "Been busy keeping the fence working," Raylan replied casually. Carver's lips curled. "The fence is fine, but the scanners still show movement near your cabin." "Wild animals," Raylan said. "Maybe scavengers from the ruins." Carver's gaze hardened. "You were a good soldier once, Raylan. Don't throw your life away for some alien sympathy." Raylan kept his voice steady. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm trying to live like the war's over." Carver leaned closer. "The war's never over, not for them." He nodded toward the mountains. "Don't forget what they did to your people." Raylan didn't answer. He watched as Carver turned his snowbike around and drove off. But the unease stayed behind, heavy as a storm cloud. Inside the cabin, Leora had been listening. When Raylan came back, she stood by the door, her face pale. "They're watching us, aren't they?" He nodded. "Yes, and if they come again, they'll search everything." She looked down at Mira, who was drawing on the floor with charcoal. "We should leave." "Leave and go where?" He asked quietly. "There's nothing but frozen wasteland out there." "You wouldn't last a week." "Then we'll die together," she said sharply. "I won't let that man risk his life for us." Raylan sighed. "You're not a burden, Leora. You and Mira. You remind me what it means to care again." Her eyes softened. "You speak like a priest." He smiled faintly. "No, just a man who's tired of burying people." That night, after Mira had fallen asleep, Leora took the memory crystal from her pouch. It glowed faint blue in her hands. Raylan watched quietly as she held it to her chest. "What's that?" He asked gently. "My husband's last memory," she said. "Before the war ended, he was captured. He told me to run, to protect our unborn child. I ran, but I lost the baby in the fire." Raylan's heart ached. "I'm sorry." She looked up. "He was a soldier who fought beside humans. He believed we could live together. For that, my people called him a traitor. When he died, I became one too." Raylan stared into the fire. "And now you're here, being hunted by both sides." She nodded. "Yes, the universe likes cruel jokes." He looked at her quietly. "Then maybe it's time someone rewrote the joke." The next day, Raylan went to the colony again. He had to deliver a report about the border. Before leaving, he told Leora and Mira to stay hidden. The moment he reached the gate, 2 guards looked at him strangely. One of them whispered something under his breath, something about the alien lover. Raylan ignored it, but his fists tightened. Rumors were spreading fast. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone came to check the cabin again. Inside the command room, Lieutenant Carver was waiting. "You've been busy," Carver said, sliding a file across the table. "Supply logs show missing food and medicine from the last delivery. Care to explain?" "I gave some to the patrol," Raylan lied. Carver's eyes narrowed. "Funny, none of them mentioned it." Raylan stayed calm. "Maybe they forgot. Or maybe you're looking for ghosts where there aren't any." Carver stood. "You're hiding something." I'll find out what. When Raylan returned home, he found Leora pacing the floor. You were gone too long, she said anxiously. I thought they caught you. They almost did, he admitted. Carver suspects everything. Mira tugged his coat. Did they hurt you? He smiled faintly and shook his head. No one's hurting anyone while I'm here. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure it was true. That evening, as the wind howled again, a new fear crept into the small cabin. They heard a mechanical hum outside, drones scanning the perimeter. Leora rushed to hide the light. Raylan loaded his rifle quietly and stood by the window. Mira whispered, "Are they coming for us?" He didn't answer. He just listened. The sound grew louder, then slowly faded into the distance. When silence returned, he set the gun down and sat heavily on the chair. That was close, he said. Too close. Leora sat beside him, her hands trembling. They'll find us, Raylan. It's only a matter of time. He turned to her. Then let's give them something else to find. What do you mean? Tomorrow, we'll move to the old outpost in the valley. It's abandoned. The scanners can't see through the mountain walls. She hesitated. You'd leave everything for us? He smiled sadly. Everything I have left fits in this room. Her throat tightened. You're a foolish man. He looked at her softly. Maybe, but sometimes it takes a fool to believe in something better. That night while Mira slept, Leora couldn't. She sat awake, watching Raylan doze near the fire. His face looked peaceful in the warm light, softer than she had ever seen it. She whispered to herself, "You don't even know what kind of danger you've taken in." But her heart said something different. He's not danger. He's hope. Her fingers brushed the memory crystal again. She placed it near the firelight and whispered, "I think he would have liked you, my love." Morning came too early. The sound of footsteps outside shattered the calm. Raylan jumped to his feet and looked out the window. A patrol team was approaching. Not drones this time, soldiers. Pack everything, he said quickly. Now, Leora grabbed the bag and wrapped Mira in a cloak. Where do we go? The back trail, he said. Through the woods. The pounding on the door came seconds later. Raylan Ward. Open up. We have orders to search your home. Raylan pulled the secret panel open again. Inside, both of you. Don't make a sound. Leora hesitated. What about you? I'll stall them. Before she could argue, he shut the panel. The door burst open. Lieutenant Carver stormed in, flanked by 2 soldiers. His voice was ice. End of the line, Ward. We found alien footprints near the fence last night. Raylan crossed his arms calmly. Maybe animals. Carver smirked. Animals don't wear boots. He gestured to a soldier who began searching the cabin. The sound of boots on wood echoed painfully. Every second felt like a hammer striking Leora's heart behind the wall. Carver stepped closer to Raylan. You had a good record, Captain. You could have had a future here. Why ruin it for them? Raylan's eyes burned. Because I remember what mercy looks like. Do you? Carver's jaw tightened. He looked ready to strike, but before he could, the soldier returned. Nothing, sir. Just old tools. Carver glared one last time. If you're lying, I'll find proof. And when I do, they'll hang you next to that alien. When the door slammed shut behind them, Raylan exhaled shakily. He opened the panel, and Leora crawled out, clutching Myra. You could have died, she whispered. He smiled weakly. So could you. She looked at him for a long time, then whispered, Maybe the stars sent us to the wrong side of the war. Just to meet you. Raylan didn't reply, but his hand found hers in the half-dark. The fire flickered between them like a small, defiant heartbeat against the endless cold. Outside, the snow fell again, soft and quiet, as if the universe itself was trying to hide their fragile secret.